Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and we are taking another look at Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, the Dungeon Master's Rules Supplement Guide for creative campaigning. So, like I said, there was a slew of these brown, blue, and green books that came out, and I'm positive that they started becoming more and more uh, uh, intense, or I don't know, more advanced. So these are like, you know, gaming 202, kind of stuff. So I really stopped buying them after a certain point. So I think, I don't know. I remember reading through this book a number of times over the years for ideas mostly, and we're looking at, let's see, what year was this? 1993. And so we have alternate campaigns, ideas for alternate campaigns, the joys of research, campaigns in historical time periods, such as the Bronze Age. So if you think about classic Conan the Barbarian, he's actually set in what we consider a sword and sorcery and not a high fantasy setting, and in part because it's more likely to be set in the Bronze Age. Leonidas and the Spartans would be also set in the Bronze Age. So the technology available to them is cruder than what you would find in the high Middle Ages, in high fantasy settings. It's the level of magic is going to be less powerful and more raw, and the weapon systems and stuff available. You're not likely to see high grade steel armor and weapons, or they would be highly rare and more likely made from things like exotic metals such as meteorite, in part adding to their quote magical aura, even though they might be completely mundane. But if you have any knowledge of metallurgy and weapon sword making, weapons making, for example, and I grant you, I am not a master in any form, just a casual observing person of interest, that iron, steel trumps pretty much everything else. So if you can come up with a finely made steel blade, the odds are really good it's going to decimate bronze and copper and even iron era weaponry. And armor. It's going to defeat them quite handily because it's much sharper, much harder, and much more durable. So that's just the facts of the major. But it sets the differences in the tones. So we get things like the Iron Age as well, the Renaissance Age, the Cavalier era. Ideally, things like the Musketeers kind of come to mind when you talk about Cavalier. But King Arthur's Knights in the Round Table and their quests and things like that would also quite well fit into the Cavalier era as well. So we get other periods. A single class campaign suggesting, why have everybody play fighters or everybody plays clerics, for example, keeping it balanced. So when you think in a single class campaign, and a lot of players, just a bunch of rogues running around. No, think about it. Think of all the diverse subclasses thereof. That if you could get to, 4 of the various subclasses that specialize in this, that, and the other thing together, what could they accomplish? How diverse and different would they be? It's just like having an all-paladin campaign. Within the paladin subclasses, there's plenty of diversity for you to have an interesting game and have enough individuality for the players to be satisfying as the characters. So, anyway, single race campaigns where the same thing holds true. Instead of having everybody's a dwarf, everybody's a halfling. So you have your variety of appropriate classes for the particular race, but they get together to do a mission or to accomplish a task or to retrieve a MacGuffin or whatever. Alternate lands and people. So this is where things get to be where you open your imagination, you stretch your imagination. When we think of the cardinal basic concepts of social and racial diversity, well, we think of Central Africa versus the Mediterranean versus the East Asia versus the States versus Europe. But within those, you can go even further. So in this case, we're talking, for example, Celtic Ireland. Do your little research on what life was like for the Celts and how things operated and how would a D&D adventure look like in that setting. Mesopotamia. So when we go back to the areas of where Iraq is, modern day Iraq is today, and all the biblical stories of ancient times, and imagine them in you running campaigns in those settings. I mean, that's the trick is being true to the settings and not allowing your preconceptions or mispreconceptions of fantasy settings to ooze into them and change them again into something completely different. Unless that's what you're going for, then knock yourself out. So the deepest Africa. Imagine dealing with the D&D on the savannah. The high savanna or in the Amazon. I mean, how would things differ? How would you change things? What kind of, how would the world look different? So Lost Worlds, the Hidden Lands, for example, well, and we've had plenty of stories of Land of the Lost and things like that in nature. Why not? Why not have them? Lost Continents, Hollow Worlds. Now, think of Skull Island from King Kong, for example. These areas that was avoided by humans for all these years because they were hidden, or they were difficult, really difficult to find, or there were too many things in the way, or whatever. And we get in and we discover the truth is far wilder and more fantastic than our wildest nightmares. So I mean, Jurassic Park. Hello. Inhabitants, getting there, history, the world of Chinook, the location, talk about geography and climate, history, lands and peoples of this world. Gives you a couple examples of some various places that you could potentially deal with. So here's some other possible miscellaneous campaigns. The players as player characters. What they mean by that is you create a player character based off of you yourself. You take what you know as your strengths and weaknesses, both in your physical stats and in your abilities, and you make a character around them. I have done that in other games. I have done that in Twilight 2000 before, or in a game setting similar to Twilight 2000. I have done that in a couple of Shadowrun games because it was just kind of pickup games at the moment. PCs as animals. Everybody's basically doing the Lion King or something. PCs as kids. So all the players are actually 8-year-olds running around on an adventure trying to save their village or something. Other ideas, use your imagination. This is where things can get really, really kooky. The master outline. If you're into the outlines, a lot of people are not. Strange Renaissance. Settings, characters, going on and on. So the more elaborate, the more odd you try to make your campaign, the more difficult to sustain it can become. That is something I've noticed out of personal experience. It's easier to create to generate a world that's quite familiar to just about, it's easy to create McDonald's world everywhere you go. It's probably the easiest way to deal with things because everybody knows what McDonald's world's going to be like and what they can expect, and then they know how you view your McDonald's world. If I want a quarter pounder, I'm going to always get my quarter pounder with no ketchup because I don't like ketchup on my burgers anymore. I haven't since I was a kid. I like the mustard. I would like mayonnaise too, but mayonnaise is not something that likes me, so mustard is safer. Anyhow, so the idea is the same thing, right? So if you're going off into really, really, really exotic locale with a lot of details, like the sky is purple, and if you sneeze, the trees, the leaves fall out of the trees or something. I mean. That sort of stuff, after a while, it gets hard to keep track of, and harder to buy into and be sustainable. So a little bit of oddity goes a long way. Just kind of point that stuff out. And so we get Carnival of the Bizarre, right? Yeah, it comes up in a couple different source books too, and at least one game module from Forgotten Realms, if I remember right. So we got grave plots, the bounty hunter, competition, false invasion, guinea pigs, looming tall, mirror, mirror, missing one skill book, nature gone wild. All examples. Poisoned, questing for poison. So your character's party become involved in a nefarious plot against their will because somebody openly poisons them or covertly poisons them and then lets them know they have 24 hours to achieve, like, whatever, and or they're going to die if they don't get their damn the antidote for the poison kind of scenario. It works for the movies. The reluctant vampire. Oh, I hate being the vampire. I hate having to suck your blood. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Here, let me suck it some more. I feel horrible. And then you have a mixture, of course, the vampire love. Oh, the vampire loves one of your characters. Oh no. Standing small, land of the lost once again, where everybody gets shrank down into microscopic size, and you're now fighting common carpenter ants the size of freaking freight trains. So yeah, random encounter generations, etc. You love the encounter charts or you don't. A lot of people don't, right? New ways to use proficiencies. There's some other stuff you have to be cautious when they start tweaking things like feats and proficiencies and racial benefits. There's a reason why they're set up the way they are, and they have been for so long. It's because it works. And when you start adding things or you start taking things away, you change the basic foundation of how something works, and it can actually become a problem because it can blow things completely out of proportion, or make it so the whatever becomes too overpowered, or simply isn't functioning the way it's supposed to. In my opinion, of course, right? New ways to use old monsters, i.e. teaming up, counter alignments, evil monsters you can't kill. Well, what do you mean we can't kill the gnolls? The gnolls they're vicious, brutal, raping thugs. Well, yeah, but the local baron likes them, so he thinks they're fancy dogs, so we can't hurt them. What? Evil monsters you just must befriend. Oh, and by the way, the fancy dogs that the local baron says we can't kill. The baron wants you to take them and go on a hunt. Excuse me? You want me to take a bunch of gnolls on a hunt and not kill them? Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is not going to end well. This is going to be a challenge. I don't know. Good morning. You have to fight the moral dilemma. New ways to use an old power. Bullywugs. This is common. This is where they talk about taking individually a bullywug is a very weak, very fragile opponent, and you don't first level would have a little bit of a challenge with them. You still need more than one to be a real challenge. At any kind of level above first level, they're no challenge at all unless you put them in their natural environment. So in this case, they're suggesting taking bullywugs and having the fight take place in water. In water deep enough, the bullywugs have the advantage because they're aquatic. They breathe underwater and they swim very well. And their strength and other abilities are enhanced while in water. It's the same with kobolds. A lot of people play kobolds basically as cannon fodder. I'm just going to throw 20 kobolds at you and you're going to murder them and then go on your merry way with a handful of tarnished coppers and a silver piece in your pocket for your effort. Instead, if you really read what kobolds, how their modus operandi are, how they operate, you really get into that and understand that they're conniving, sneaky little devils that love traps, love confined locations, love ambushing their opponents. They're not fond of stand-up fights where they get slaughtered like cattle, and they're not foolishly stupid. I mean, they do have some abilities to recognize if we stand up in the open room against things that are 10 times our size, we're going to get butchered. So let's not do that. Let's put ourselves in the harder spots for them to get to. Let's rig up the traps and the nets and the rock falls and and those become force multipliers. At that point, you can have a small group of kobolds do a lot of damage to a party if the party's not able to get to work around the fact that they're working in a non-standard environment situation. So a Yeti and the Blizzard reverse the roles. New uses for old treasures, reusing gems and jewelry, gold pieces, works of art. Who owns it? And typically, a dungeon is a no man's land where the finder's keeper is the only law. For a little fun, let's break the tradition. The player kickers may find a large amount of treasure or a very valuable item, only to learn others have claim to those riches. The local baron is descended from people who lived in the ruins back at the height of their glory, and they considered all the wealth found in the ruins to be family heirlooms. In order to encourage adventurers to loot the place and recover his family goods, he allows them to keep 1/4 or 1/2 or 3/4 of the treasure they find. But that is all. Right? So, setting up freestyle for freestyle gaming, wits over force, the character group, story-oriented players, team players, rivals, story versus the role versus the role of differences. So there's been from the very beginning a movement of players who really strive to get in character, to become the character that they are shepherding through the campaign, and in doing so, they as a group, the players divorce themselves from any outside of canon, outside of the in the game character talk and conversation as much as possible. The idea being is to create a theater of the mind where we all are envisioning an actual thing taking place and we're participating in it. And things, these pesky little nonsense things like rolling dice and discussing rather tactics on how to approach and deal with something, unless you can figure out how to do that in the game, in character, so it doesn't sound like it's lame, it's a challenge. But that stuff's been from the very beginning, from the earliest versions of these games, and I just like to point that out to those who sometimes think that this is something new or something recent. So, playing freestyle, we have cliffhangers, critical junctures, strangers, conclusion of action, the mundane break. I need to think. Sometimes you just need to say, I need a moment. Maybe I need a moment to use the bathroom. Maybe I need a moment to really think twice about how I'm going to have my character react to a situation because the outcome is potentially bad. So things like, gender, experience, age, gaming styles, problem, personalities, dealing with people with issues, convention. So as stated before, gamers do not fall in any specific category in their personalities. While some would like to believe that all gamers are calm, rational, confident, intelligent, unfailing, and cheerful, we will have to admit that this does not always hold true. There are gamers who are grandstanding, stubborn, argumentative, short-tempered, and even, as hard as it may believe, painfully shy. Each of these type of people must be dealt with in his own way. Grandstanding gamer is always out for the character's glory, blah, blah, blah. So, a lot of good advice, a lot of common sense. Some things that would come up and that we wouldn't think of, and this is where somebody else has encountered it and wanted to share. So we get into the grand tour of key D&D settings. So we got the Forgotten Realms setting, the flavor, unique areas, mysteries, and personalities. We got the El Qadam campaign area, the farthest south, the core areas, Forgotten Realms, the flavor, unique areas, mysteries, personalities, and the mundane. Karator, this lies southeast, the core areas of the Forgotten Realms can reach, but blah blah blah, which is also a setting. And I think it was it's elements of medieval Japan, China, and Mongolia is the far east. So Mesotakia, west of the core areas, Forgotten Realms, South American with dinosaurs, if I remember right, in that campaign. Then we have the Dragonlance setting, the Spelljammer setting, Ravenloft setting. I wish I'd kept my Ravenloft. I gave that Ravenloft away to my son along with the basic stuff. I'm pretty sure of it. Because I can't think of who else. I was not very generous when it comes to giving my game resources away to other people. It's so hard for me to acquire them, and I spent so much of my free money on them. It was just me being selfish in ways, I guess. The Dark Sun setting. I never got into Dark Sun. I looked at the box set, and I think I bought one item. I might have bought the original box set too, but I don't know where that is, and I never played it. In the Greyhawk setting, that was the thing. When we got our basic set and our expert set, Greyhawk was the setting, because Forgotten Realms didn't exist. None of these other settings had not yet been envisioned yet. So Greyhawk was the original setting, or the very earliest setting that came in with the red box set, and there was a little source book, little mini booklet to cover the Greyhawk, and then the expert set came out and was a little bit more advanced one, and they had a map, a big color map of Greyhawk that went with it too, and then there was a supplement that was for Greyhawk by itself, and I think I bought that, but I'd be damned if I know where any of that's at. The thing with Greyhawk was this was Gary Gygax's vision of his standard game world, and this was what became the thing for most of us at the late 70s to the very early 80s, until we started seeing Forgotten Realms and these other settings started coming out, when the popularity for Dungeons & Dragons had grown sufficiently enough. So now we got Chapter 7, The Medieval Mindset. Right? That's one of these things that that when we talk about a version of theater of the mind, of buying into the role that you're trying to portray. It's one thing to sit there and pretend like you're pushing, I'm pushing a bunch of battle minis around the map, and it's another thing to sit back and envision yourself as the pilot of one of those minis, or as the individual pilot while you're dealing with whatever combat scenario you're dealing with. You're trying to put your head in that position of that pilot. What would they think? Where would they aim? What would be their priorities, etc. And that in and of itself is a form of role playing. You are playing a role, no matter how you define it. And you may not portray that role on the tabletop as a make-believe situation, but you are still conveying information and facts to your contemporaries at the same table, based on your attempts to envision your mind with that particular pilot for that machine needs and demands are going to be at that moment. And that's a bit complicated is a way to look at that, but it's the truth. It's the truth, and it all plays a significant role, even when we don't think it does, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm Rick. You're not. Let's roll on to the next damn thing, right? Come on, where you at?